So welcome to section 2 of Gibi School. You finished the section 1, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, applied JavaScript, DOM manipulation, and a lot of things in JavaScript. You also did the build week, which was 2 weeks of building our application. You guys did it. So now we're in section 2 where we get into React. So today we'll learn React, and let me just read a little bit of the description. So today we'll learn React components and component state. So most of you have learned components in JavaScript. You learned how to build a component, a basic component in JavaScript, how to select the DOM, how to create element in the DOM. So we're just advancing that. So React basically takes that concept of creating elements, creating components, and using JavaScript to manipulate the HTML. It takes that to the next level. So it says here, components are the building blocks of React application. We use components to display some data, often called state, to the screen of our users. In this module, you will learn how to build the components that can hold state to create a great experience for our end user. Some of the things that we'll cover and you will understand at the end will be, you'll be able to describe what React is and the problems it tries to solve. You'll be able to explain what components are and how they work in React. You'll be able to explain what state is in web application and demonstrate how to make React components stateful. You will be able to change the state of a component with a click listener. So those are the kind of things we'll cover today, but we'll also cover more than that. There's one more thing that's missing here, which you guys didn't learn before, which is package management, MBM, which we will learn right here, MBM. So let me just, in a general concept, let me just explain what React is. So a lot of times we're creating a website with just HTML, which is what we were doing before. That's great, but imagine you want the website to be interactive. Let's say if you go to Facebook or any other website with a comments, like, share, things like that. The problem comes when, let's say you go to this website. Let's say this is a Facebook. I don't want to go to Facebook. So let's say this is Facebook, and you click a like button. So you click a like button. Maybe let's go to here. You click a button. Let's say this one, you expand it like that. So as you can see, this is expanding. This is done mostly in JavaScript, right? The page is not loading. It's not refreshing the whole page. Sometimes when, let's say you go to tutorial here and you click that, it goes really fast, but the page actually refreshes. And if we go to other websites, if we go to something like this, see, as you can see, the page goes blank and it loads, and then it renders. It shows what we're looking for. So just to avoid that, so that the page loads faster, we have React. So React mainly does works only with the UI, just the front end of the website, basically the HTML. So if we go to the actual website of reactjs.org. I have a new keyboard, so it has a button that takes a screenshot, and every time I touch that, it takes a screenshot. So what is React? So React is a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. What does that even mean? So React is a system that was built using JavaScript. It's designed to make the life of developers easier, so that when you're building a website where things are changing really fast, things are moving, just like Facebook, or if you go to Twitter. If you go to Twitter, you will see that there's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of tweets, there's a lot of shares, likes, and not shares, but retweets and things like that. A lot of things are happening. And if you have that, if every time you have a new tweet, the whole page loads, then it's a waste of space. You basically, it's basically like when you're, let's say you're an artist. So you're an artist, so you're drawing something, and let's say every time you want to change something in that drawing, let's say you want to add a color at the bottom. What if you delete everything, if you erase everything and then restart the whole thing and then draw it again, and then just add that little part of the color at the bottom? That would be waste of time. So that's basically what the browsers are doing. They're repainting the whole website. Every time you visit a new page, they're basically repainting it. They're it's re-rendering everything again, the whole HTML, everything. So basically, React avoids that. It only updates the parts that you want to update. So here's a basic example of how React looks like. Let me just zoom in here so you guys can see better. So here is a basic example of React. Forget about the whole code. Just that we want to figure out, we just want to know the interactivity. So this one, let's say, so this one is not that much of interactive. It's just, it says a name here. But let's say this one, not even this one. Okay, so we have an input here. So this input outputs a text. It says here's an output. So this is a better example because we're changing something here. So now if we change this to something like hello Gaby School, as you can see at the bottom, it's changing automatically. In like, it's not waiting for us. So it says here hello students. As you can see, it's refreshing. So what it's doing is it created a component for here, and it created another component here, and these two components are connected. So instead of us submitting this whole thing, having a submit button, submitting everything, and then the whole page loads, and then now you see your text here. Instead of doing that, React basically makes it easy so that every time everything we type here just shows here, and it only changes this part. Just like the example of the artist, instead of repainting everything, the artist just adds that little color at the bottom. So React basically adds something to the browser without changing the whole image of the browser, the whole website. So that's basically what React stands for. So we understand basically what React is, what it stands for, why do we need to use it. Now comes basically how do you use it, okay? So let's go to the first example. It's much simpler. Remember, as you can see here, React uses two things. It uses functions and it uses classes. So in our course, we will use mostly functions. We will just avoid classes. But you remember creating classes. So when we were doing the classes in JavaScript, you just call class and then you give it a name. As you can see, this one extends. So extends, as you guys remember, actually, who can tell me what extends does in class in JavaScript? Just as an example. I just want to, I know you guys remember that. We covered several times. Anyone remembers? That's okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think it extends the attributes from a function to another one.
Yes. So yep, go ahead.
Yeah, like when you create class and you want to create a class from the class, the thing you already made as a blueprint.
Yep. So it creates, it grabs information from another class, and this is more like a child class, let's say, right? So this is a child class of React.component. React.component is something created by React. It's a whole system. It's a whole code that you could extend. You basically could grab something from it. And all we're doing is we're rendering. We just add this key render, and we're not going to use class forever. We're just going to use function from in most of the time. But as you can see here, it returns to. So so render basically renders a as you can see here, kind of like an object, right? It's an object. But then in the object, we return this HTML, and we will learn what this HTML is. This is not actually an HTML. It shows div, but it's not an HTML. It's called JSX. And if we untoggle it, as you can see, that's how it looks like underneath, like underneath the hood. But if we toggle it, as you can see, it looks familiar because you worked with HTML. So React basically, this one will be like a function. We will be using function. So imagine like the class is the actual function. And then we're rendering or we're returning just a normal HTML. And that's it. So that's all we're doing. We just add everything we want to like show in the website right here. So that's how basically the React is kind of like structured. So if we want to change this to a, let's say, to a function, all we have to do is, yeah, I hope I can. So we're going to say function. This was, the name was, what was the name? Hello message, right? So we say function here. Say function, not that. Function hello message. I think that's how it was. Hello message, right? So we can just copy this, paste, and then we just give the normal function keys. So, and we just remove this render because in the function there is no render, and remove this. This is also a way of doing React. But first we have to bring React from here. So we have to say import React from, I'm not sure if it's gonna allow me here, from React. And okay, so we have to say require instead of, okay. So usually we say import actually. And here let's say React. Okay, it's not shown here, but the main thing is this is kind of like the function way of writing it instead of class. So we use a normal function and we return just HTML. Keep that in mind. So that's the anatomy of React, either class or function. At the bottom here, what you're seeing is how to show something here. So this is a generic thing that each React project has. It basically saying there's something called React DOM that React has, and it renders whatever you have here. So it renders the message, which is this function, and it gives a name of Tyler. So that's, we will learn that that's called prop. We will learn it, but then it grabs the example. It grabs where you want to render. So as you can see, you learn this. It says documented dot get element by ID, and then that's what we're rendering. And we will learn more about this, where this is located, where is the index HTML file, all that stuff we will learn today. But I'm just showing you how React looks like. Okay, any questions so far? Any questions? Okay, let's go back here. So so we said describe and describe React and what the problem it solves. Mainly the problem it solves is instead of the whole page reloading, you only have parts of the page loading automatically. So that's the main problem it solves. Okay, so the next thing is explain what components are and how they work in React. So before we get to that, I want to explain what NPM is, because we want to install React in our computer. We want to put it in our computer. So what is NPM? So NPM stands for Node Package Manager. Stands for Node Package Manager. It's a place which has a lot of applications. So it has the world's largest software registry or library. So it's basically a app store for node related things like give me a second. Give me a second. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, sorry about that. So NPM is a node package manager. It's mainly the one that you will be using to install applications for React, for different things. And it's not only for React. So NPM can be used for like the backend. So when we're learning Node, when we're learning Node, you're going to use NPM to install applications that you're going to be using. So React, basically, it's very empty. So the first time you install React, there's not much going on. There's a few package, few files, different things that you have, but you have to kind of like everything you want to build, you have to grab. So let's say if you want to build a navigation, you have to install a navigation package. Let's say you want to build, let's say something like you want to do a API call, then you could grab like Axios. Remember, we used Axios for like a little bit. So if you want to use Axios, it's already in the NPM market. So all you have to do is just say NPM install. As you can see here, you say NPM install, and then the package's name right here. So, and we will be using the terminal for this. So that's what NPM is. It's very, very important to learn what it is and how to use it. But it's really simple. We'll go through example, and we will actually install React using NPM, but a different type of NPM, not the actual NPM. So React. So here is let's go to React website, not this one, right here. And if we go to docs, there's different ways of installing React. So React, basically, it's very complicated system when you first learn. It's if you want to start from like the scratch of how React was built. React is built upon a couple of technologies. One of the technologies that React was built on is Babel. So Babel, let's say React XJS, JSX. Okay, so this is one technology that React was built upon. There was an example. Let's see, try out. So Babel is a technology that allows you to convert normal. It allows you to convert normal JavaScript to a way to render. So I'll show you an example. It's better if I show you an example. So let's see. So if we write something here, let's go to the docs here. So we just get an example. So let's say we write example like this. We're returning a div here. So if we grab this, let's see. It's better if I grab something that's JSX example. Babel JSX example. Sorry. Example here. Then we could just put it in, and you'll see how it works underneath. I'm just looking for something that. Okay, let's see. What is Babel? Okay, JSX. Okay, so here is the one. So if we take this code, which is just basically a div, but this is JSX, remember, so JSX is different. Sorry, there's kids screaming in the background. So JSX is different. It's not it's not a HTML. So we could remove this comment, and as you can see, it's a normal div. But in reality, and we could just put here students. So you guys can hear me clearly, right? There's kids screaming in the background. So if you see here, you have a normal JSX, and here you have the presentation of JavaScript. So this is what in the background Babel creates, basically. So this Babel translates this you write in JSX here to this. So it says basically, go ahead. It creates it calls React, which is its own package, and then it says create element, and then it says we're creating an element called div, and then and there's something here. It's called props, but we don't have any props here. and then it gives the message here. If we add a prop here, like it had before, so it'd be something like that, name, something like that. Then it gives that, it says, okay, there is a prop name, and we have to actually do changes to it. But the main thing is, whatever you write in that looks like HTML, this technology Babel is running in the background, and it's basically translating it into actual JavaScript. Instead of you writing, you don't hear any. Okay, good. If you guys don't hear any background, it's fine. That's good. So Babel we don't have to deal with Babel, and also there's other technologies. We don't have to deal all that, but just understand that in the background React, it works with Babel, and we don't have to deal with it. So React kind of like abstracts. It gives abstraction to all those technologies, so you don't have to deal with them. We will use something called create React app right here. Create React app. It's basically a command that you run into your in your computer, and it brings everything you need about React. You don't have to configure anything. You don't have to do anything. It just automatically brings React. It gives you all the things you need, and then it just runs. Okay, so we will use this command. So now let me grab my my stuff, my terminal. So right here is my terminal. Let me zoom in so you guys can see everything I'm typing. Hopefully I can zoom in. I think it's command and zoom. Okay, it's much better. Okay. So now what we could do is right here. I'm already in a folder that I wanted. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type that same command, this command. And you see here, it says MBX. MBX is a different type of version of NPM. So this is kind of like the only times that you will use. If something tells you use MBX, just use the MBX. But most of the time, it will say here NPM. So we'll say MBX, right? And you have to have Git in your computer, and you have to have a node in your computer. So keep that in mind. So those two things you need to have. So if you want to know if you have a node, you just say node -- version, and it will tell you the version. If you don't have that, then go to node. I think we went over this one time. I'm not sure. Go to node, Node.js, this website, and I'll share it. And then just click this, and you can install it. So I said this, I think, one time because we've been using it for a while. So let me share that. Okay, where is it? So I'm going to share that. All right. So you have to have a node. You have to have npm installed, and I think that's all you need for now. All right, let's go back to the terminal. So let's go back to here. So let's go back to here, and then not this one, but this, and install. We're gonna install React now. So we're gonna say mbx, and then create. You have to write it exactly like this: create React app, and then give it a name. So whatever name you want. Right here, as you can see here, we have my app. You could write it whatever you want. So we're gonna call it here. We're gonna call it something like a first project or something like that. First project. Okay. So now if we enter hit, if we have everything set up, like our npm, our node and other things, it should work. It should kind of like go through. It's gonna go through a step-by-step of installation. It's gonna tell us need to install the following packages, and then you say yes. You type Y, which is yes, and then it just goes and installs, and then it asks you a couple other things. Sometimes it just goes creates everything for you. So it's creating that for us right now. It's basically bringing the React to all the React packages that we need, everything we need about React into our computer. So we don't have to do all the setup. We don't have to install Babel or Webpack, which is another system that React uses. Basically, it configures everything for us, and then we could use it. And by the way, React was created by Facebook and is still maintained by Facebook and Instagram. So it's a huge technology, and it has a rivals. Basically, it has competition. Some of the competition is Angular, which is owned by Google, Angular JS. So Angular is another technology that's exactly like React, but more complex, and it uses not JavaScript, but it uses TypeScript. It's much bigger than React, but it does the same thing, which is change the UI of the website. There's also Vue.js, which is owned by a guy. It was created by a guy who who worked at Google, and this is his name, even Vue. That's what it's called, Vue, and it does the same thing as React. So these are the three main frameworks, I should say, that do a UI systems. So they're called frameworks. Sometimes React is called library because it's smaller, it's lightweight. But out of all of them, React is the best. Everybody agrees that. When I say best, I mean it's the most popular and it's most used. So if you have used Angular before and you like Angular, that's fine. If you use Vue, that's fine. But for jobs, then React is the one that most people are looking for. Okay, there's another thing also to keep in mind. There's also something called Yarn. I know you guys are learning a lot of technologies today. Let me, right here, it says Yarn start. Yarn is similar to NPM. It's also a package manager. So if you go here, Yarn, if you go package manager. So Yarn is also a package manager. It's much, it's a little bit faster than NPM, but it sometimes it doesn't have some of the packages that NPM has. So keep that in mind. You could use either Yarn or NPM. So as you can see here, it says if we want to start our React project, we say Yarn start, or you could just say NPM start. So now the project is installed, everything's ready, but we have to kind of like look at the files that it installed. So we go here and go to Gaby. So this is our folder right here. So the folder, let's open it in VS Code. Let's open VS Code. Let's open new folder and grab that. Okay, open it. So we're opening in VS Code, and you will learn the structure of React, the basic React and how it looks like. So let me zoom in. So this is kind of like the structure of React. You have a file called node modules. Always you have that, and we don't change that. We don't touch that. So node modules is all the packages you need to run this software or React. So every time you install something from node, or you say node npm package manager, it goes here. Or you say yarn add, or you say npm install, it goes here. You never touch node modules. If you wanna, if something is not working in your React, you could just delete it. You could delete it, and then you run it again. You run the software again. You say npm install, and it installs everything again. Okay, and then there's public. The public is where the HTML is. So as you can see here, we have like favecon, or whatever you call it. It's just a small image that goes into the website. We have a logo, different types of logo. We have a manifest. Don't delete this manifest. It's basically a way for the browser to keep track of like the changes and things like that. We have robots.txt. It doesn't do a lot. It's just basically it's a way of kind of like stopping spam, or things like that, hackers and things like that. And then there's and this index, We didn't create any of this. This is created by the React team for us, basically, to just get started. So, and another thing is you don't touch this file. That's the thing about React. The only thing that you will maybe configure is maybe like the name here. But other than that, this file will stay the same. And it has only one thing. It has this this route. So it has a div with the ID of root, and that's it. So it doesn't have anything else. It's not trying to be fancy. You don't change anything from here except like maybe just the name. Everything happens in the source here, the source folder. So the source folder is where we like interact with React and change things. So I don't want to lose track of the time. So okay, so so this is the HTML, and everything that we do in React goes into this div. That's it. So that's what you need to know about this public. The last, not the last thing, but the second, the next thing is the source. The source is the main thing. We'll come back for it. Let me just explain what the git ignore is. The git ignore is basically, if you want to send this to GitHub, it ignores these things. So it ignores the node modules, because the node modules, you don't need to have it in your GitHub because it's very big most of the time. It's like maybe like 100 to 200 megabyte of storage. So you don't need to have it. You could just say npm install, and then the software or the React will use package.json to know what packages to install. So you don't even need it. So anyone can like clone your stuff and say npm install, and then it just copy it grabs all the packages for them. So we don't need to like put it in GitHub and they just move it around that way. And also packages actually change their versions, they update. So it's best to not actually have all the packages. Just it's best to update it. That's what git ignore is. Like all the things that you want to ignore in GitHub, you put it in here. And then there is the main thing, package.json. This is where this is basically like the blueprint or the DNA of your React project. So package.json is used in Node.js, is used in a lot of places. So it's a way to keep track of what this is. So now it's basically saying this project's name is this, Fars project, the version is this. It just gives you a version like that to start with. It says it's private. I don't know what that means right now. And then it has dependencies. Dependencies is things that your project depends on, right? And you're gonna install more dependencies. Dependencies are basically packages. So you're gonna install more dependencies. Let's say if you want to create a navigation, you have to install like a navigation package. If you want to do something like images, you have to install like an image package. So they all go here, just the name of it. So it goes the name and then the version of the package. You could install it, uninstall it, do all that stuff. Let's say we wanna install a new package here. Let's say we want to install something like let's say we want to install Axios, because Axios you guys tried before. All we have to do, we're just gonna go to the terminal, and we could open the terminal from here in Node.js, and it opens the folder for us. You have to be in the file where all this stuff is, and then all you have to do is say npm install Axios. And how do I know that command, npm install Axios? If you go to, if you want to install Axios, all you have to do is just say Axios install, and then you see here it's in npm, it's in Node Package Manager, and then you just look for a command to install. Usually it's right here, as you can see here. It says npm I is shortened for install. You could just say I or install. If you go down, it says here, you can see npm install. You could use yarn too. You could use yarn add. So when you're using yarn, you have to say add. And also you have to install yarn in your computer. So keep that in mind if you want to install. You could also use Bower for Macs if you want to use that. So these are different ways of installing. So that's how I know how to install this. And I installed it 100 times. So I know. So if you do that and you say enter, your computer goes and installs it quickly. As you can see here, boom, it's installed already. And it gives you the latest package, latest version. and it does that. You could install it with yarn too. So if you want to remove it, you just say npm uninstall Axios, and then it just removes it automatically. As you can see, it's gone. If you want to use yarn, usually it's best to use one thing, like most of the time, if it works for you. If you want to use yarn, you say yarn add Axios. You do that, and it just goes through this process, and then it adds it here, just like npm does it. As you can see now, yarn is a little bit slower than npm, but they do the same thing most of the time. And there are some packages that are not in yarn, so keep that in mind. So very few packages, not a lot. Okay, so it's installing. So when it finishes, it adds it to our packages, our dependencies, basically, just like npm. So as you can see, it added here, right? So if you want to remove something from yarn, you just say yarn remove Axios. Boom. We're not using Axios today, so we just remove it. And that's how you install dependencies in React. You just have to find the package, and you could just also search in npm.com. Let's say something related to navigation. There's a React navigation. This React navigation stack, this is for like a React native, so just keep that in mind. Or instead of navigation, React is called router, or router, yeah. So this is a way to create a router in a route. Not this is for Node. So you have to keep in mind that not everything in npm is for React. It's for, let's say, it's for Node on the back end. It's for different things. So keep that in mind. The best way to know is it will say within the package, it will say like, what is it for, somewhere in the package. And also you will know it by when you're trying to import, or when you're trying to get it, and we will learn that later. So there's different ways to know it. Okay, so that is that's a Node packager. That's how you install a package, and that's how you uninstall it, and everything happens in package.json. There's a couple of things in here, just like the script. There is development, all this stuff. So all these things you will learn later, but just keep in mind that all the dependencies are everything that you're going to use in your React. Any questions so far? It's a lot, I know. It's a lot of things to cover. Okay. Let's talk about source, and then we'll take a break. So source, and just ignore this yarn.lock. It's basically, it says a lock because you're not supposed to go in there. It's basically a way for the application or React to keep track of the packages that you're installing. It's another way of like safeguarding basically everything you installed. So you don't touch the package lock or yarn lock. If you're using both yarn and npm, you're gonna have both of them. You're gonna have both locks. But if you're using only npm and you never use yarn, you're not gonna have the yarn here. So just keep that in mind. Okay, let's talk about the source, and then after that we'll take a break, and then we will go to the next section. So source is where everything happens, like where you write your code, where you change things, where you update things. A couple of things to know about the source. I mean, so you see all these files. You see app.css. As you can imagine, this is where the styling happens. So you just do normal styling, just like HTML. App.js is a component, or it's its own component. So keep in mind that React, everything is a component. So everything in React is a component. So this is a component. As you can see, it's we learned this before. We went over when we were at the website. It does few imports. So it basically does a logo import. So it brings the logo from like here, from the public. And it also, not the public, the logo is right here, somewhere here, it's right here. And it also brings the CSS. So it says import, and then it gives the directory of the CSS, which is this one. And then after that, it starts the function, which is a component. This whole thing is one component, right? So it says it's a normal function. Don't overthink it. But keep in mind that it's always capitalized. It's convention. It's not must, but it's convention. So this is a class, you know. Keep in mind that functions are also objects and classes are objects. So everything in JavaScript is an object. So functions and classes are kind of like interchangeable, but you have to, we'll stick with functions. So you create the component, you give it a name, and then you return whatever you want to return. So how do we see this? How do we see this in the browser? So to see this in the browser, you go to terminal, and then you say npm start, or you could say yarn start. And now React is gonna go and it's gonna render all this stuff in the browser, and it's gonna show us. So if we say render, as you can see, it's opening automatically, and it's here. So as you can see, we started React. It gives us a localhost 3000. It has the logo here, the logo, animated logo, and it has a text here. If we go back to VS Code, as you can see here, let's lower this. If we go back to VS Code, we have a div. We start with a div, and this is JSX, which we will cover a little bit more in the next half. So we have the JSX of div, and in React, every time you want to create a component, you have to have a parent element. So it could be div, it could be paragraph, it could be anything, but it has to, everything has to come under one thing. So now this one is a div. It has a class name. Remember in CSS or in HTML, you write just class like this. But since this is JavaScript, and JavaScript will be confused if you say class, because it will think like it's an actual class. We just say class name, and that's how you write it. So it has a class name of app, which is in here. So this is the CSS is trying to render, and then it has a header, which is a component. It's not a component, but header. It's HTML semantic, basically. It's trying to mimic HTML semantic. So we have a header, we have a class name of that, we have an image, it has the image source. And if you see this curly brackets, it's a way of React kind of rendering JavaScript. So if you see any of this in here after return within the JSX, then this means this is a JavaScript, and this is like a variable. So where is it getting this variable from? Who can tell me? This is a normal variable.
Where it says import logo from.
Import logo, yes. So it's getting from here. It's basically rendering the logo from here. This logo, it's grabbing, it's importing, basically import. Like in the real world, we say import when you bring something in. So it's importing logo, and then it's rendering here. It's giving it like a normal JavaScript, and it's giving a class of that, and it's giving an alt of that. And you could also do this a something like, you could just like, we could change the alt to a JavaScript. You could say let alt equal to whatever logo. So, and then we could just put it right here. We could just say something like that. We could say alt, right? So it could render a normal JavaScript variable. And every time you want to do any JavaScript related stuff, you put it right before the return. If you put anything after the return, it will not know if it will not know unless that is like something like HTML. So if you put something here like let some variable, and then it will not know. It will confuse and it will give you an error. So keep that in mind. Everything goes between this and the return. So, and then here's a paragraph. This is the same like this. This is the paragraph. And then we have this, which is a link, I guess. This is a link, and the header, which is closes this header, and this last div, which closes the first div. And the last thing we have is this closing parenthesis, which is this one. And we have closing bracket, which is the function right here. So another thing to have always, so if you have a component, you always have to export the component. Remember, we're importing stuff here. So for this component to be used in somewhere else, we have to export it. So we say export default, and then we give the function name, which is this. So that's kind of like the anatomy of how a component looks like. A basic simple component of React. That's how it looks like. These other things you don't have to worry about. We have app.test.js. It's basically a way to test your React. We're not going to use any testing, so we don't need it. There's also index. We have a couple of index. So this index, the first one is just a normal CSS. The last one, the second one, which is JavaScript, is it's like the entryway. It's like the entryway for your JavaScript application. So this is where you connect your JavaScript to HTML file. So as you can see here, we're importing a lot of things. We're importing React, and every time you want to create a React file, so index.js or app.js, you always have to import React. As you can see, if you go here all the way, actually it's not importing React. I don't know why it's not doing that, but most of the time you have to import React, and especially if you're using React. So this one is using React because it's right here. This one is not using React anywhere. That's why we're not importing. So if we were using a class here, we have to import React. Or if we were using anything related to React, then we will import it. So, and then it's importing React DOM from React DOM, which is a package, right? Package. If we go here, we have React DOM, a package. It's also importing the CSS, which is this one. It's importing an app thing, which is this, the one we just went through. It's importing that. It's importing this report web vital or whatever. We're not going to use that ever, so we can just delete it if we want. So if you delete something and it's imported, you will get an error, basically. As you can see, they have an error here. So keep that in mind. If you get an error, that means you deleted something and you didn't delete the import. So you have to delete import and say save. You have to save the file. And also we imported, we're basically using that right here. We're using it right here. So you have to delete it. You have to delete all this. We don't need it. As you can see, it goes back to normal. So that's really important. So it's basically using the React DOM to render our app, which is this component that we were talking about. It's rendering that. It's also using something called React.strict mode. This is more of like a preference. You don't have to use React.strict mode. It's kind of like a better way to keep your React more, let's say if you do some mistakes that are simple, if you don't use React strict mode, it will not allow you to have those errors, or it will give you warnings. So just that, you don't have to have it. And then it takes everything that we created, which is an app.js, and it attaches to the document to get element by ID root, which is in here, right here in our HTML, which is right here. And that's how it's rendering all this, right? So we're not touching any HTML. We're doing everything in JavaScript in React, and we're using JSX, which is also itself looks like a HTML to kind of render everything that we want to render. So that's kind of like that's the setup for React. Any questions? Any questions so far? Okay. So what you could do is we'll go over more. We'll build a basic application. We will build a counter, a click counter or whatever, and we will talk about how to create more components. So this component is one component, and if you want to create more, there's different ways of doing it. So we want to add our own component. This is example one. Let's see if I didn't cover anything so far. Okay, I'll give you guys a break, 10 minutes, and then we'll get back to it, and then we'll start building something from scratch, a component from scratch. So I'll give you guys 10 minutes. All right, see you soon. Okay, let's get back to it. I hope everyone is here. Okay, let's see. Just double checking everything's good. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, let's get back to what we were doing before. So we learned what React component is. We learned the different folders and different sections of when you grab React using the React create keyword or command. So this is not how React looks like in, like, if you want to start from scratch. This is basically a simplified way for you. And if you just want to start a project, you could just start from here. So you don't have to configure everything and kind of like add everything by yourself. So just keep that in mind. This is not exactly the way that React is set up. You have to install Babel, Webpack, different technologies to make it work. But this simplifies for us, so we don't have to think about other things. All right, so let's get started and create a counter with React. We'll create a counter that let me show you how it looks like at the end. Find a product. So this is how it's going to look like. So this counter, and also we will be using Code Sandbox. Today we will use VS Code, but from here on, the other lessons we'll be using Code Sandbox, because I want you guys to understand how to set up your own React. If I say set up your own React, but Code Sandbox is very easy, simpler for like presentation. Okay, so we'll be creating this, and when you click add, it adds one here automatically. Without the page reloading, it adds one. And if you add another, it adds one. If you add multiply by 5, it adds 5 here. And it multiplies it by 5, I mean. And then multiply 10 by 5, that would be 50. You could reset it to 0. So it's pretty cool counter, and it's when I say responsive, I mean you don't have to reload the page, it just automatically adds to it. Okay, so that's what we'll be creating today with our project. All right, so let's configure what we have already, so that it's easier for us to navigate. So a couple of things that we will delete is the logo. We'll delete the logo, we don't need it. We will delete setup test. We will we'll keep the rest. Just we'll configure the CSS here, and we'll put all the CSS in one. So we'll put all the CSS in index.js instead of update.js. So if we delete all that and we go back to our project, is broken. And let's put right next to each other so that you guys can see every change that we make here. And let me just make this one maybe smaller, or just collapse it. No, we'll keep it. Let's make this smaller. Okay. Yeah, I think that's as small as you can get. All right. Hopefully you guys can see the whole view. All right. So the reason it's broken is because we have like a couple of things imported that we deleted. We deleted the app.css, so we're going to change this to index, not that, index.css. We deleted the logo, so we get rid of the logo. We also need to say here import React. So just like here, it says here import React, we're just going to do that. Import React from React. We will be using that. What else? So we don't even need any of this. So we're just going to keep one of the things. So, and let's just remove this. I was just going to put here a header just that says React counter h1. Let's put h1, h2 is fine. React counter. Okay, save that. Still we have issue because in the index.js we have index this one important, so we don't oh, actually this one we change it to not that but this. Save it, and this we deleted. Why is it not showing that? Okay, index. Okay, index.css, right? Okay, that looks good. In here we deleted, let's see, what did we delete here? We have this index.css, cannot find the file. Okay, still not loading. So we can, if you have issue of loading, you could either refresh it, as you can see it refreshed, or you could restart the whole thing by saying, by going to terminal and restarting it. All right, so we have like a simple application setup for us right here. We have it here, simple here. So now what I need to do is, first thing I'll do is I'll grab the CSS we need to use, because we're not focusing on the CSS. We're just basically focusing on building the application. So let me grab that. And let me just put it in here. Instead of all this, just gonna paste our CSS. As you can see, it changes everything for us. It centers this for us. So that's all we needed. So we're not gonna focus on the CSS at this moment. All right, so what's the next thing we need to do? We need to start with the app.js. So the app.js, we need to we need to make it so that we have a counter. So I showed you guys the counter. To get the counter, we need to add a couple of things. First thing we need to add is, let's add a, let's add the HTML first. Before we do anything else, let's add the HTML. So, so I'll add the HTML here. Let me just write some note here so that you guys can keep track of everything. So the first thing we did, we added a header. So this one is common sense. I mean, you could, it's just like HTML. And then we will add, give me a second. I'm just trying to make sure everything looks good. And then we will add just the text. So this one is just a paragraph. So this one doesn't need a lot of explanation either. It's just a paragraph. We'll give it a class name of, let's give it a click. And this is already in the CSS. Click descending. And in here, we will add, you clicked, and then we'll give it a span. And then we'll give we'll give a count. So this count is a variable. We'll call it a state. So we will learn that in a minute. And then we'll just give this a span, closing span. It's already closed here. So let's just delete that. Okay. So this is the thing that changes. So if we save now, it will show error because this count doesn't exist. So if we save it, it shows error. This count doesn't exist. So what we could do is we could set up the count. And to set up the count, we need to learn something called React hooks. Okay. So before we do that, let's add the buttons. So we can just move on from the HTML. Let's add the buttons here. So button, and this button will have a couple of things. But before we do all that, let's just say multiply. Let's give it multiply, not multiply. Let's say add one, first one. And then we'll add another button. Okay. And we'll give it this one, multiply by 5. Okay. And the last one is reset. So button, and we'll give some attributes of click and things like that. But first, let's just set up the HTML. So now if we save, we're still gonna have the error, but here let's just put like 0 here for now. as you can see, we have the HTML setup. Nothing's going to happen now because we have nothing going on here. It's just a normal HTML. We hard coded this to 0. And if we add something else here, like let's add something like 4, it's hard coded, as you can see, it's here. All right, so we have the HTML. Now we need to learn something called, and also we don't need this log out. We need to learn something called React hooks. Okay, let's go to the browser. It's open already. Let's make it bigger. Let's go to here and type React hooks. React hooks. So React hooks is it's not really new, but it came with React functions. So how React worked was like at the beginning, React for a very long time, React was classes. It was class-based. Everything was classes. And it makes sense because JavaScript had classes for a while. But then they realized that functions are a little bit better than classes because functions can be easy to work with, let's say. And also it's easy to add things to. Classes are already built in JavaScript. So it's hard to kind of like manipulate, add things to it, kind of make it your own. So React introduced functions. With functions, they also introduced something called hooks. So what are hooks basically? Hooks are a way to change something from the component. So if you want to change something from the component, let's say if you want to change the state, how the component looks like, you use something called the use state, which is a hook. And always when you hear about hooks, they always use like this use thing before it. So use, it means use state, use this state. So now the state is 0. The state basically means how the component is at the moment. So the component is 0 now. So that's what the state is. So use state is a hook. There's several other hooks that you could use. So let's see. Let's just get an introduction of what are hooks. Hooks are new features introduced in JavaScript in React. It allows you to use state or other React features without writing a class. Hooks are functions which hook into React state. So basically, hooks are other functions that the React group wrote down, and you could also create your own hook, custom hook. They're called custom hook. They're a little bit difficult to create, so we will learn that maybe at the end of React. It's basically a way to like get hooked on React. So you use React's power and you add something to it by using these hooks. Okay, let's see any other description. I think that's pretty much it, the description. It's a way to add something to React. So we're going to use state to change the state of the component, how the component looks like. So right now our component, which is this one, the state is 0. So right now nothing is happening. Even if you add something, nothing is there. It is 0. If you want to change the state of the app, we change this by just instead of refreshing the whole page, we change this. So to do that, we have to import the use state. To import the use state, we go all at the top, and then we at the top here just like React, because the use state and the other ones are part of React. So all we have to do the use state, and you have to write it like that. You have to say use in a lowercase, and then state and start with the S capital case. So if we want to use it, it's basically a simple variable. So all we have to do is we have to say constant, and then give a empty empty array, and then say use state, and then give that, and then start with a 0, right? In here, we're gonna add what we need to change. So use state takes 2 things. It takes the current state, which we are. So right now it's a 0, the current state. And then it also takes a way to change the state. So it takes something called set state. So now we're gonna say here count, and then the next one is set count. So these are the 2 things it takes. Every time you want to create something, It doesn't, whatever the name is. Let's say you're basically changing like, let's say you're changing a score. You say here score, and here you say set score. And you have to write it like that, the set score. And your word starts with the capital, and then you add set before it. Okay, so that's what hooks are. They're basically a way to kind of like change the state or how the component looks like. Let me just drink water. Okay, so now we could use the count variable or the count word in here instead of the hard-coded 0. So we can say count, and if we save it, which is here, you'll see that it will work. Nothing happens because it's 0 here. If we change here the state to like 5, it changes to 5. So that's interesting because right now we could manipulate this state by using some type of click or something like click event. So in React, it also has a click event, just like normal JavaScript, where they have where we have a clicks and event listeners, but React has its own type of click or event listener. So to change this, we need to do a couple of things. Okay, we need to create a simple function that that increases the number, right? So a very simple function, it will not have much. It will only increase the number. On outside, on right here, we create that small function. So, okay, so let's do that. So we don't even have to create that function. Actually, we could just do it inline actually. So we'll make it simple actually. Let's do it inline. So the first one is this button. It needs to add 1 to each to the number, which is 0, starting 0. All we have to do is now in here in the button, we'll say on click. This is just like event listener for JavaScript, but this is how React writes it. We'll say we'll give it a we'll put inside here, which is the expression, which is the JavaScript expression. We'll put a callback function. So we'll say we could write a arrow function. So we'll say arrow function here. It's an empty anonymous arrow function. So this function will call the set count. We'll call set count. It will call set count, and we'll say set count. And now set count, we will give 2 things here. Sorry. Set count will give it. What's going on? Yeah, set count will give. First thing we'll give is the actual count, which is the state, which the state, which is 0 right now. So we say set it to 0, but we don't want just that. We want to add to 1. So all we have to do is we say plus 1. So basically this button, every time we click it, it goes to this method. And then it says, okay, we want to change the state. This is state. We want to change it. So grab the current state, which is the count, and then add 1 to it. And that's it. So now if we save it, and we go to here and we click it, it adds 1. It's that simple. You don't have to do event listeners. You don't have to do all that. You don't have to deal with any of the event listeners, right? So that's much simpler than pure JavaScript, which you guys dealt with a lot. So now the reset on this is not working because we have to do the same thing in here. So we do the same thing. We say on click equal to. Sorry, I'm using a keyboard. Excuse me, the keyboard that I'm not used to. And then we will say callback function, anonymous callback function, set count, And here, so what do we put in here right now? Since you guys we already did this one. What do we put here?
Time is 5.
So we say count times 5.
Yeah.
Right. So now if we save it and we refresh it, because that's how you reset if you don't have anything else. We say plus plus 5 times 5, 25 times 5, 125, and it goes really big. So to reset, all we have to do is we reset it to the initial state. So what we can do is we could do two things we could do two things. We could just set it to the count, and that will set it, but that could also create a problem. So we could try that. Let's just try that and set it to the count to reset it. On click equal to expression, and then we say callback function. So this callback function, we could say set count, and then we could just say count here. So now let's try this one. Let's see if this works. So let's refresh it, add something to it, and reset. See, it will not reset. The reason why it's not resetting is because we already have click. We already have a count as a 4. So React is already keeping track of what count is. So now it has 4. Now, if you say reset, you're basically saying, okay, make it exactly what it is. So to do that, to make this work, we have to create an initial state. So initial, basically, something initial that it can reset to. So we just create another variable here. We could just say initial state. Initial state, set 0. So now we could just reset it to that. So we just say set to initial state, right? And that will set it to this 0. So now if we refresh, we add something to it, we reset, it goes back to 0. So it's that simple when you're dealing with React. You don't have to deal with any click event listeners. You don't have to deal with anything. All you have to deal with is just your HTML and some state changes that you have to do, and maybe a couple of functions you have to do. But other than that, you're just dealing with normal HTML. Any questions so far? Any questions? Okay. All right, let's see. Let's go back to the lesson. Let's go back here. So we learned what React is, the problem it solves. We explained what component is and how they work in React. We explained state in a web application and demonstrate how to make a React component stateful. So when it says React component is stateful, it's talking about this. So we moved from just being in a basic component that has nothing other than just the HTML tags and things like that to a component that is stateful, that has a state with it. So this is a state. It's called a state. And now we're changing the state, manipulating the state, and that's what stateful stands for. And also here, change the state of the component with a click listener, which we just did. So this is the click listener. So reset and all that. Okay. If we don't have, if we have nothing here, it's not gonna multiply anything. So that's also something to keep in mind. Let's see, what else did we miss? So we did all that. Let me just walk through this and see if we missed anything. Let me know if you have any question about what we're doing right now. And also, as you can see here, we're trying to change image from this to this by switching it. So, and we're using a state, as you can see here. So this state is light on, and then this one is set light on. And every time you change the state, to either false or true, the light changes back and forth. So that's how you also use state. Okay, click event listener. We did all that. So this one is another example of changing an image back and forth, so that you have like a light bulb thing going on. So I think there is also a I think there is some type of code sandbox in here that we could go to. Let's just click here. Okay. Let's see code. No, it's not here. All right. So you could read more about it here. You could learn, but mainly that's what we're covering today. Let's see. I'm just looking for if I missed anything. Other than that, I think we covered almost everything for today's lecture. So there's a question that someone asked me: is React used for websites or mobile apps? So React is used for both. So you could build a website, or you could build an app with it. And I'm actually using both right now. I'm building an app, mobile app, which you could send it to the Apple Store, or you could send it to the Android store, just like normal apps, by using just React. But we're not using just React. We're using something called React Native. That's what I'm using, React Native, which is a React but for mobiles. So React Native is just a React that you already knew, but it's built for mobiles. So if you want to build a mobile app, you use React Native. It's exactly the same thing. The only difference is when you were doing the JSX and the HTML, here you will change it a little bit. You'll say view instead of like a div. You just say view. Instead of paragraph, you say text, things like that. But other than that, it's exactly the same thing. And also you use the same npm, same place, same everything same. But also you could use React for like normal websites. Actually, if you go to any website these days, they use React. So any of the big websites, if you go to, let's say, any e-commerce website, let's say Best Buy, and you install a extension called Webalizer, I think, right here in your Chrome. They show you the technologies they use, and one of the technologies is React. If you go to any website, go to Walmart website, any of the big companies in the world, these days they use React somehow. See, it says here React. Just go any website, go to Amazon. There's some type of React. It might not show because Amazon is a little more sophisticated when it comes to technology, but they're all using React to some way. Social media websites use all React. Twitter uses React, Facebook, all of them. So it's pretty much one of the biggest technologies in the world when it comes to building websites, building mobile apps, all that stuff. I have a couple of websites that I built with just React. So I've heard developers that they work with React only. Is it a complete language, meaning both front end and back end? So React is only for the front end. So it's not for the back end. So React only works with the browser. It's a JavaScript, so it only works on the front end. There's something else for the back end, which is Node. It's very similar to React. There's really not many difference, except that instead of doing this HTML stuff, you will still keep using JavaScript. Instead of returning JSX, you'll return the normal thing, like normal function. So Node.js is for the backend. So React is only for the front end. Keep that in mind. It's only for the front end. So you could build a lot of things with it. And it's a huge market. So there's so many companies looking for React developers. So it's a big thing. So once you learn React, you're very employable. You're very valuable in the market, especially if you're really good at React. You could build applications that you understand the ins and outs. You become very, very valuable. Okay, let's see if I'm missing anything else. Actually, I wanted to show you guys how React works with the DOM. Okay, so as you can see, as you already know that you guys learned how like the DOM works, right? So let me just, I like it at the bottom here. So you guys remember the DOM. We go to console log. Let me make it bigger. You just, it's the DOM document. The document that's kind of like your DOM. So this is the DOM tree. This is the DOM nodes and all that. So if you want to change something from here, you have to either create a element. So you have to use create element to create a new element in the DOM. If you want to target, you have to use document dot get element or a query selector. So we learned all that, right? So basically what React is doing is it has something called a virtual DOM. So it has a virtual DOM. So let's look at this, how virtual DOM looks like. So this image right here, the top thing is the virtual DOM, which is a kind of representation created by React to mimic the actual DOM, the browser DOM. That's where the name came from, React. It basically, you know how the DOM is very expensive, it's very heavy, and it's hard to like manipulate on the fly really quick, like really fast, because it's a nodes that you have to remove, add, change, go to the child, go up, traverse. All. So the DOM itself, it's pretty heavy, right? The API, it's not like the most snappy thing ever. And it takes a lot of effort and a lot of things, a lot of code to change it quickly and to make it smooth. So the React team, what they did was they looked at the DOM and they said, it's impossible to actually have applications just like Facebook or Twitter where things are really snappy and like things are changing. There's a comment going on. There's a multiple things going on within the website. You might be typing a comment and submitting it, and there's a notification coming. How is that even happening? So that's happening because of the virtual DOM. So the virtual DOM is a lightweight. It's not actually just, it's not like the DOM. It doesn't have nodes or anything. It's like an image. It's basically looking at the actual DOM and it's taking pictures, basically. Like for the lack of better word, it's taking pictures, and every second, let's say, it's taking a picture every second of the DOM, the actual DOM, and it's looking for any changes. If there's any slight change, like what we saw in our, like at the beginning when we're testing React here, just like here. So what we're doing right now is we're basically changing the DOM. We're saying, so right now if we write here something, what I'm doing is, and right here, what it's doing is it's saying, take this and do text content is equal to this, and then just react to it automatically, right? So React, basically what it's doing is it's watching the actual DOM, this DOM that we have in our browser. It's watching and it's taking snaps, pictures. And every time it sees something change. So here is the DOM, and something changed right now. Like we're changing. It's looking and it's reacting to it automatically. That's what it's doing. So that's what the virtual DOM is doing. It's reacting to basically the changes that happen in here, and it's only changing the parts that change. So if there's any change, it changes that part, and it refreshes. It basically refreshes only that specific area, instead of refreshing the whole thing. So that's where the name React came from. Is basically it has a virtual DOM, which is a representation of the actual DOM, and even if you look at the code that we were working with, so if you look at the index.js, it has a React DOM. So this is the one we're talking about, The virtual DOM we're talking about is this React DOM, right? So it's a black box, so we don't know what's in here. You could actually go and look for it and study it, but it's a huge file and a lot of files of JavaScript where you could where it watches the DOM change. So I need to get charged from my computer, but yeah, that's the virtual DOM. Any questions? Okay. So I think you guys understand how the React works, how to do the installation. So let's just quickly go to the assignment for today, for tomorrow, before my computer dies. Let's go to here, go all the way down, click this. This is a project, so make sure you fork it, clone it. So the same steps that we were doing before, nothing changed. Create your own branch, read the description of the project, what it is. This is a football scoreboard. So you create a football scoreboard, basically. And then every time you click something, the score changes. Make sure when you install the file, you say npm install or yarn install, because that's how you install all the files. All the packages. Read the MVP. So number one, hold each team's current score in a state. So I actually showed you that like a small example. Render each team's current score that is in a state to the DOM. Be able to click at different buttons and increment appropriate team's score by current amount. And step 2, you just use that. Step 3, step 4, and if you want to do the stretch, you could do it. So yeah, that's basically it for the project. So make sure you install it. When you clone it, make sure every time you clone something, go to the folder and you have to say npm install and click enter. When that's finished, you say npm start, and then it opens in the browser. And that's it. And then you could just start working on it. And then when you're done with it, make sure before you do anything, you say git checkout and you create your branch. And then after you've done it, you say git add dot and then git submit, git push. Okay, you guys are good with that. Any questions so far?
Ma'an, I have a question.
Hey,
I was trying to download we have to download the Node and JS, right?
yep. So we have to
So-
get Node.
I was trying to download it, and then after it shows me like custom setup, like select the way you want the features to be installed, like Node.js or npm package manager.
All of them, yeah, all of them install Greso. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, install all of them. If just you need all of them. npm, you need the node package manager, all that stuff. So add all of
Okay.
them. Yep. And also install, if you want to use yarn, install yarn. Otherwise, have the git 2 in your system. Most of you have it already. So other than that, today's project, you don't have to do the installation that we did. All you have to do is just clone it. So you don't have to do all the installation. You just clone it and you say npm is, follow these steps. It will help you a lot. It will make things clear for you. Any other questions? All right. Okay. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Start working on your project at 6 p.m. Finish at 10. We will have stand up by 9:30 tomorrow, and then on Saturday we'll have another lesson, inshallah. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.